Welcome to Tales from the Bridge. My name is Tristan.
My name is Sam.
I'm James.
And I'm Kevin.
And we've got a great book of the month to talk about now and a few more things, don't we?
Yep. We're going to talk a little bit about some science fiction, science fact, which is keeping on the time travel theme of our show.
And we'll talk a little bit about what we've been reading this summer.
Any beach reads out there?
Actually, my beach read this year was a recommendation from you, Tristan. So, but more on that later.
And as usual, if you have not rated the show, left us a review or followed us, whatever you got to do, we'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show.
Leave a comment on Facebook or on Instagram or send us an email. Yeah, we certainly want to hear from you.
And if you're so inclined, feel free to time travel back in time and leave a like and a review for us on a previous episode as well, too.
Ooh.
That's a good idea. Time travels are probably listening to our show, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, let's make our way over to the bridge. Speaking of time travelers, have you guys ever wondered whether or not there are time travelers among us? Just like we talk about with aliens among us, are there people who are actually from other planets who live in our world? Well, are there other people from our own world, from the future, who are living amongst us? It seems like an unknowable question, I guess. But as you might imagine, there has been some scientific rigor placed on that question, and I came across an article in archive.org, which is an open repository for scientific journals, and a section of archive.org in popular physics had a paper of two authors, Robert Nemiroff and Teresa Wilson, where they took that question of trying to find time travelers and put some scientific thinking behind how could we ever investigate whether or not time travelers actually exist among us today. So they put together an experimental design that does a few things to try to find these people among us. They looked for time travelers by first checking to see, and I'm not sure why they did this, but they started searching for references to Pope Francis prior to his indoctrination, ordination, whatever it's called when a pope becomes pope.
Popified.
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 That's right. When the Pope is popified. So what they did is they searched for references to Pope Francis prior to his popification, and to see whether or not anybody had made social media posts or whether or not they searched for it. And they used Google Trends to look for a significant number of Google searches, and they used hashtags on Twitter because they can do chronological searches. And they searched between 2006 and 2014, and they came up with some fascinating results. Anybody want to guess what the results were?
Oh, I feel like they came up empty-handed.
Yeah, they didn't actually find any time travelers.
Bummer.
But I feel like there are some flaws with the limitations to this research. For example, if I were a time traveler and I didn't want anybody to know that I was a time traveler, I don't think I would do social media posts with hashtag Pope Francis prior to his popification. So certainly there's some questionable methodology here, I would say. But what I thought was cool is that somebody is trying to get tenure or at least doing some academic research that's getting published in peer-reviewed journals about trying to find time travelers. It's cool, no?
Yeah, it's totally good. It actually reminds me of the story about Stephen Hawking throwing a party for time travelers. He got a room in Cambridge and decorated with balloons and got some champagne. And then he sat in the empty room for like 2 hours and no one showed up. And then he advertised for the party afterwards. And I imagine he enjoyed the champagne, but yeah, no one showed up.
So he sat in the empty room with his champagne, kind of whatever day drank, and got hammed all by himself.
100%, yeah. And I mean, hey, I kind of want time travel to be real, and I want there to be time travelers among us. And so my hope is that 12-year-old Sam wants there to be, there's a protocol attached to this, right? This is a big business, maybe, or it's a big thing, and there's tons of rules attached to those people who do travel back in time. So they're not going to go on Twitter or show up at Steven's gig, but I don't know. That's what that's what I'm going to tell myself, so that I can just live in the hope that yeah, maybe there's some future person standing next to me on the subway. Who
You
knows?
got to imagine they're a little smarter than that for
Yeah,
sure.
I
And it
guess.
also assumes a linear timeline, right? Like what we always hear about in sci-fi is that it because it's easy for us to understand is this concept of linear timelines, but who knows? Maybe that's not the case. Maybe there's multiple timelines. And when you go backwards, you're going back to, there could be many off branches from all of our time, as quantum mechanics might imply.
That's right.
Well, you guys do know, of course, that I am a time traveler, right? I actually move forward in time 1 second at a time, you
Oh,
know?
nice.
Sci-fi dad joke.
Sorry.
It does seem plausible to me, though, that maybe in 1,000 years or 500,000 years, that we would be looking for time travelers that had the technology to go closer to the speed of light away from Earth and then return. So that seems like the only way, because I don't think we can go back. But I do think that in the distant, distant future, we will be looking almost like in the Thousand Earths by Stephen Baxter, where we have, I forget that character's name now, but was it John? No, yeah, John something.
Yeah, John something.
But he travels and he keeps on going further and further into the future. I do think that in if humans or whatever form we have in the distant, distant future, we will be looking for time travelers returning, I think. But
Because
that's just
that's theoretically possible, right? We know about that right now. You accelerate close to the speed of light or towards the speed of light and you experience time slower. So yeah, we could totally time travel like that uh, theoretically. And what's funny is that the authors of this paper, Nemiroff and Wilson, explicitly exclude looking for time travelers from the past, and their rationale is that they don't think that people from the past would have the necessary technology to be able to travel forward in the future. But they're neglecting the possibility that maybe there's previous human civilizations, on our own planet. Maybe they could accelerate out into space and come back relativistically and time travel. I
have
mean,
they
that's a
never
bit of a
seen
stretch.
Ancient Aliens? Like,
Oh,
come
right.
on.
Mm.
Sam, didn't you were you a part of that show?
uh, I had left History Television when a lot of the alien programming
Okay.
came out. The dude with the hair, like I will say that that was after my tenure at History, but it would have been a fun show to work on. I don't blame him for it.
Well, I think the Sumerians are coming back. They're coming.
Soon. We gotta watch out for them.
Chariots coming down the street. Feel like it'll be a short conflict.
Yeah.
Cool.
Hey, let's talk a little bit about what we're reading, and I'm just going to get started because I actually am reading a book that Tristan recommended. I have been reading Delta V by Daniel Suarez, and it's kind of Andy Weir-ish, kind of a near future uh, sci-fi where these space miners are sent to an asteroid to extract minerals and valuable minerals and resources. And it touches upon some really interesting subjects, some of the things we've talked about on the show before about, like what would corporate space look like? And, the further away you get from your HR department, the greater the opportunities for bad behavior, and all of that happens. And it also talks about some of the sort of near future technology that's sort of within reach, so that it gets there's sort of great science element. It's not quite Andy Weir. It's kind of like I described it as a The Martian meets a book written by an Elon Musk ghostwriter, because there is this sort of like uber rich tech dude who's sort of behind it all, and so there's a lot of egos attached to the project and all the sort of stuff that gets written into it. But it was a fun beach read, and I think I'll go back for book two. I see that that's already been published, and maybe I'll even go to book three if it comes out. But worth checking out. It was a kind of a fun sci-fi read that's not all spaceships and lasers. This is about like what does a space economy look like, and why is that so necessary? Because it is, even with all this sort of greed behind it. We do, if we can extract resources off planet, there's an environmental argument for this direction as well. So anyways, definitely lots of interesting concepts in this, and I would recommend it. Anyway, so that's what I've been up to.
And that was a recommendation from one of our listeners who emailed in to let us know that they had read that and recommended it to us. So thank you for sending that in. And it took us a little while to get to it, but I'm glad you enjoyed it, Sam. It kind of reminded me almost of a prequel to The Expanse.
Yeah.
As much as that's a bit of a meme, it kind of had it, that spacefaring billionaires, but really enjoyable, fun, action-packed kind of story.
I've been doing actually a fair bit of reading over the last little while. In addition to the book that we were reading for the book of the month, I also finished off the Expanse series and listened to Leviathan Falls. There is a novella after this one, but this is the final one, and it wraps up the series in a nice tight little bow to a certain extent. It is very much in keeping with the rest of the series. Very action packed, very exciting, keeps you reading. So yeah, I mean, for those of you who haven't read it, you got to finish the series. It's definitely worth it. Such a lot of spaceship pew pew, battles, all that kind of good stuff. Extremely accessible and very enjoyable. So I really enjoyed that. But then I felt like I needed to do something completely different. I've heard over the years so many good things about Ursula Le Guin, a classic science fiction author, one who I have never read before, and I have no idea why not. So I read The Left Hand of Darkness. I actually listened to it as an audiobook, and I loved it. Her writing is very literary. She's extremely like poetic. She's very thoughtful about her writing. And I actually read the foreword of The Left Hand of Darkness. And in it, she refers to herself not as a futurist, not as a predictor of things related to science. She calls herself liar. And she says that she's a professional liar. And when you read her work, thinking about it from that perspective, is she's really trying to convince us of a story. She's trying to convince us of a world, and this is what I guess all authors try to do. But I really like that that's her take on what being a good author is. And after finishing The Left Hand of Darkness, I found myself wanting more. So then I read The City of Illusions, and then now I'm reading The Lathe of Heaven, and I'm halfway through that one. So yeah, lots of reading for me over the last month.
I love that book, Left Hand of Darkness. I think it's fantastic. And you just reminded me of the foreword. I think she tries to describe what science fiction is, does she
Mhm.
not? And
Yeah,
it's
it could be. It could be. I mean, I think a lot of people would call themselves futurists and predictors, but she doesn't. Like, it is
yeah.
a lot of hubris to say that. Nobody can predict the future. So maybe she just had a little bit less levels of hubris than some authors.
Hmm. I remember my brother wrote a letter to her when he was a teenager because he read her work. He must have said, I read your books often. I love reading in the bathtub. And I know he said this because she wrote back to him and she drew a little picture of a dragon in a bathtub,
Oh, that is really cool.
which was
That is
kind
super
of
cool.
funny.
Yeah.
That's
Does
where
he
he
still
likes
have
to
it?
read. The bathtub, I think, is gone. No, yeah, he has the letter somewhere. I'm sure. Well, he wouldn't throw that away. He loved her so, and
Awesome.
she passed away. I don't know, not too long ago, maybe 10 years ago, not too long ago. I'd read a couple. I've slowed down because summer's quite busy for me. So I did read my next Ian M. Banks book on the list because he's become one of, if not my favorite writer, science fiction writer, after reading maybe three of his books. I'm just like, this is it. This is exactly what I want every time. So I read Look to Windward, which is one of the Culture Series books. Absolutely loved it. It's hilarious. It's thought provoking. It's got some action. Characters are so funny. I'm always blown away by how good the drones are. The drones are some of the best written characters in this series. The mines, and oh my goodness, I'm just every time I read one of his books, I'm always just like, yeah, that was just fantastic. So Look to Windward, highly recommended. And then I did read a book that is not so science fiction. So sorry, guys. I read Jaws by Peter Benchley, and this is because I'm a huge Jaws fan. I'm a Spielberg fanboy, and I'd never read the book. It's a great book. It's got a lot of outdated crap in it that I'm glad they lost for the movie. Um, but it was really neat to see those backstories and stuff. So very enjoyable book. I'd call that a beach read because half of it was based on a beach. But one thing I'll tell you guys right now, spoiler, if you don't want to hear this about the book, skip it 30 seconds. Are you ready? Hooper dies at the end. Matt Hooper dies at the end of the book. And in the
Hmm.
movie, the two of them float away. So that was like, whoa, Hooper dies. Anyway, I love that movie. Uh, and the book was pretty good. I really enjoyed the book. And then I read, or I'm currently listening to Live Forever by Jack Vance because I haven't read any Jack Vance. So I'm happy to check that one out. And so far, I'm just a little bit into it, about 4 or 5 chapters. So far, so good.
So I also love Spielberg, and Jaws was a super terrifying, formative movie for me in my childhood as well too. I actually think it's one of those perfect gems of a movie, just perfectly. If it was a diamond, it would be a perfect cut diamond. But years ago, I was working at a TV production company in Toronto, and they were developing something with Peter Benchley. It was a new series based on a property of his, and this was when he was still alive, obviously. And I was so excited. I'd heard he was coming into the building. I was looking around. I was trying to get my work done, but keeping an eye open for Benchley. Where's Benchley? Is he close? The day went on, and I didn't see him anywhere. But of course, where did I finally find Peter Benchley but in the men's washroom? And yeah, I'm there at the urinal, and Peter Benchley comes in, and he's there doing his stuff as well too. And I had to do it. I did the thing, and I waited until all of our business was over and hands had been washed, and I just said, hey, Mr. Benchley, just wanted to say I love your work. Red Jaws, great stuff. Movie was meant so much to me as a kid as well, and he just politely and graciously smiled and said, "Yes, yes, well, thank you." And I think that Spielberg kid has some promise for the future. And so that was my brush with Peter Benchley. I was feeling kind of bad because my brain has gone into summer mode as well too, and I hadn't read anything else other than our book of the month. But then I remembered that I also had read it involves an alien, so I guess it's kind of sci-fi. Being the old comics nerd that I have talked about before, I finally got around to reading Superman Birthright. I don't know if you guys have read this in the past too. It came out in
No.
2003, 2004. So it's, God, 20 years old now. I can't believe I hadn't read it before now, but it's by Mark Waid, who is a longtime DC and Marvel writer, and drawn by Lionel Francis Yu. And it's sort of a retelling of Superman's origin. It was originally supposed to be non-canon, and then they made it canon for a while, and now it's non-canon again. But it was just, I love Superman. Just the not just the primary colors, but those sort of primary emotions and primary ideals as well too. And the art was gorgeous. The storytelling was great. It's another look at Krypton and Smallville and Metropolis rather, and Lex Luthor and that antagonism. So a really classic Superman tale, and I would highly recommend it as well too if you're into that thing at all. Okay. The first 15 Lives of Harry August was recommended to Tristan and I when we were chatting with Wes Ball a couple of months ago. And Wes is the director of Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. We had a great chat with Wes. He was so fun and interesting and down to earth. And he recommended this as a book that he loved, and was working on getting into development as a movie as well too. I'm not sure where that is at the moment. Tristan, do you know anything about that?
As far as I know, it's in development. There's writers, there's a script out there that's been written. There's a couple writers working on it. There's producers. So I think they're trying to make it happen. But from reading the book, you can tell it's very difficult to adapt. So I think it's just a bit of a challenge, and they're probably just trying to work through how to adapt it properly. So
Yeah, I can absolutely see that. But I hope they're successful because this book, written by Claire North, and Claire North is the pseudonym or pen name of Catherine Webb, who's a London, UK based author who also goes by another pen name, Kate Griffin. Um, this was her first book under this pen name. Catherine seems, this is my first book of hers, but she seems very prolific. I'm looking forward to reading more of her stuff. The book became a word of mouth bestseller and was even shortlisted for the Arthur C. Clarke Award. And I can see why. I found it really fascinating and an amazingly fresh take on the whole time travel idea. Um, I don't want to give away too many spoilers because I do think this is a book that people should discover as they go through it and read for themselves. But it is time travel kind of in the form of reincarnation, where you're born, you live, you die, and then you're reborn again as yourself in the same scenario. But then as your memories come back to you, which, as you can imagine, as a child, causes the characters some distress at the beginning, um, you can make different decisions. You can live a different version of your own life, which is an amazing idea. And I think probably something most, if not all of us, think about from time to time and the decisions we make and the paths we go down. Um, but in Claire's book, a select few people are born with this ability, this gift, this curse. I'm not sure what you would call it. I guess it depends on your perspective. But they remember their previous lives, and especially our protagonist, Harry August, who's also what they call a mnemonic, which means he remembers everything. He's got kind of like a photographic memory for everything. Um, so these people, these Ouroborans or Kalashakra, which are both names based from Greek and Egyptian or Buddhist traditions, they're a small percentage of the population, and they sort of coast under the surface. They, for the most part, they live their lives, they do their thing, but they don't meddle too much because the main sort of tent poles of history stay as they are. The 9/11s happen. All of the big events that we all know and remember from the headlines. The moon landing happens until they start to not, and until things start to change. And I'm sure you guys will probably have your take on this too. I felt like the book sort of was going in one direction, which was an enjoyable direction. I was sort of enjoying seeing how Harry was going through his life or his lives, I should say. Um, and then it switched. Then it sort of shifted into a higher gear, and the stakes got bigger and things changed. But I enjoyed that as well too. And I found it to be a really interesting meditation on a lot of basic ideas like free will and morality, but in a fresh way, and even our hero Harry August, he's not an angel in every one of his lives, and I thought that was really fascinating. Again, I don't well, and again, the writing style, um, I found to be really engaging. It wasn't ostentatious. It was enjoyable and beautifully written, but not flashy. And and the structure was kind of perfect. There were flashbacks and flash forwards, and I didn't find it difficult to follow. But yeah, I enjoyed it, and I am very much looking forward to more of Claire/Catherine's books, and hopefully a movie version as well too. What do you guys think?
This is the first book that I've read of hers, and it suckered me in. Like I got right into it. I actually found it engaging, and it kept me wanting to read through it. So first of all, that's a big check mark in my estimation. Um, then when I was first reading it, and when I was reading the reviews about it, I kept thinking about the movie Groundhog Day, and I thought, oh, this is an old trope. This has been done. But this it takes a trope that could be unoriginal and it makes it very original. I actually really thought that her approach to this reliving of your life and maintaining your memory, kind of like Groundhog Day, um, she thought through the implications of that. What does it mean for the society if that's the case? You know, they could very easily change history each time they go through it. You know, like somebody could have a very large impact on what happens in society if they know what's going to come about. And so she takes that into consideration. She creates a culture around that amongst the Cronus Club and the how the social norms are for these people who relive their lives. I thought that was very thoughtful. In terms of kind of this meditation on what it makes us think about, I'm at peak midlife crisis age. So for me, this was it made me think, oh, wouldn't that be amazing to be able to do a different life? And not that my life is bad, my life is great, but wouldn't it be great to reinvent yourself as a crime boss or to be, to do something completely, to become a professor in Cambridge or, like he has that opportunity. These characters have that opportunity and they do it and they do it repeatedly. And so in terms of escapism, because that's one of the reasons why I love science fiction, this is a great escapism book. Not that it's all flowers and pixies. Certainly there's torture, there's some pretty dark scenes in this book. But it was a great book from that perspective, and it made me think, oh, this would be really, really cool. But yes, the twists and the turns, James, I agree. I was also very surprised at what direction this book went. And I did find it engaging. I found it engaging right to the very end. So yeah, I thought that was a great pick, James, and I appreciate the recommendation.
Oh, thanks, and thank you, Wes.
Hmm.
I really enjoyed this too. This was I really got a kick out of this one. It might have been maybe 4 lives more than needed, but overall, like it could have been the 11 lives, first 11 lives of Harry Otter. So there's a couple of points in there. I was like, I could do without this, but uh, overall, totally worth it. I think time travel is really hard to do well. We've talked about that in the past, or to at least do it without like a bunch of angry Reddit posts. And I think Claire handles this narrative perfectly. And I didn't get too lost. And I thought the book was perfectly paced. I personally have gotten a bit tired of action scenes in sci-fi, and I like it when you can still have the suspense and a little bit of action, but in a way that's still readable. I don't feel the need to read faster, um, and but she handles it in a way that's just it's never boring and it's just well balanced and thoughtful. If uh, if someone were to ask me to recommend a time travel book, this would be in my top two for sure to recommend. I really did enjoy a break from sort of the spaceship laser fare that we do read a lot of, and I thought that, like you said, Kevin, like, oh, we're just going to do Groundhog Day here, but that could be fun. And then it totally takes it to a really interesting place. Like you said, built a culture around it. Uh, yeah, I really enjoyed this book, and I do hope they make it into a movie. I could see where it'd be difficult. Maybe it'd be better as like a mini series. You could see it like a 15 episode series or 11. It's a high recommend from me. I want to read more by this author, and yeah, I think that's all I got to drag on about this. It's a fantastic pick of the month, James.
Yeah, I also think it's a great pick due to the timing as well. Like reading a lot of the high adventure and coming off of Three Body Problem, just the futurist. That is why I like the escapism of science fiction. It was nice to get a really neat historical fiction twist on science fiction because that is more rare. So to hear the stories from World War II was really cool. To hear that he was born in, around the time of World War One and to his childhood being in the 20s was really refreshing. And her writing really complements that. to read something this different. And I think the closest, did you guys find it a little bit close to Sea of Tranquility in that kind of time travel-y, kind of classic, well-written literature? Did you see a connection there?
Tonally, kind of
Yep.
tonally, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I could
Yeah.
see that.
Yeah.
So I was reminded of that. I like I like the idea of this being adapted for film because of that Edge of Tomorrow, Groundhog Day. Like that is people like that for some reason. I don't know why, and I think it is the escapism that Kevin was talking about. The chance to do something again is something we kind of all have. Like we all would love to kind of try something again and do it better. I wasn't sure about the ending. The ending seemed a little bit. I don't want to say rushed, but I will say this: there is an antagonist, and you don't really see it coming for a while. Also, right? And the way they did that, I can see that lending itself to film very well. But even just in the book, it was very well done. My
I
one
actually
thing
think you're
is
right, though. Sorry, I just on that
okay.
note of the film, though. I think you're totally right, Sam. That like a 15 or 11 part series on HBO would be perfect for this, as
Yeah.
opposed to a standalone film.
Yeah.
It could tell the story better. Yeah,
I mean,
I think
each
you're right.
episode would be a life, and that would be, yeah, that'd be fantastic. I mean, it's always purpose built. You would, once you think of it that way, right? Like, if I was a producer at one of these services, that would be something I'd be throwing around for sure.
I think it's made some really good insights as well. What one thing I'll say, by one thing that it's not a complaint, but I guess just something that was missing for me was Harry August. I looking back, I can't tell who that guy was. I know his experiences, but I don't. There wasn't a whole lot of character to him. I don't see his react. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something, but I didn't see a whole lot from his character, and it seemed a little
He really was multiple characters. And I wonder if that was by design too, is that this you started
probably.
out, you thought Harry was somebody, and then through the living of 15 lives, he changes and he becomes like, oh wow, how could Harry do that? I can't believe Harry would do that. But I guess through maybe that's she's making a point there that you do change. You know, people who change their lives and move overseas and I don't know, have a second family, that they change, I guess. So Harry is embodying that as a character, maybe.
Yeah. No, I think you're right, Kevin. That makes sense. I'm going to read a little bit because I think that this little excerpt I have here from the book uh, lends an understanding to what the book is about and some of the subjects it tackles about human nature and about time. Time is simple. We can divide it into simple parts, measure it, arrange dinner by it, drink whiskey to its passage. We can mathematically deploy it, use it to express ideas about the observable universe, and yet, if asked to explain it in simple language to a child, in simple language which is not deceit, of course, we are powerless. The most it ever seems we know how to do with time is to waste it. So it's a little bit skeptical in the way she puts it, but are we wasting time? That's a big question. I mean, it doesn't matter what we do. We know that there's a point to what is done by the end of the story. At least these are, and here's the thing though that I find quite interesting. These are the first 15 lives of Harry August. Where do we go after that? Great pick because of the timing. I getting a bit of historical fiction with our science fiction was the perfect timing for me. So great pick, James. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I almost think too, just genre wise, and it's almost a funny mix of sci-fi and historical fiction and fantasy as well too. Like I think it sort of blurs those lines to an enjoyable degree. I think it's a nice thing that you can't put a simple, easy pin in. So that was another thing I appreciated about it too. So yeah, glad you guys liked it. And I think Catherine sounds like a fascinating author and human being, and we should try to get her on the show one of these days once we maybe get her a few more books under our belt.
I was thinking the same thing. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Do you want to find out what you're reading next?
Oh, yes. Yes, I
Yeah.
do.
The next book we are reading is called Recursion by Blake Crouch.
Ooh.
And this is a book I know nothing about. And so I'm glad to go into this blind. This is by the author of Dark Matter, which was a huge hit, best-selling book, made into a series. I think Apple. I'm not sure exactly. I haven't seen the series, but apparently it's a fantastic series, Dark Matter. So when I was looking into this, I really Dark Matter's on my list of books to read. It came out in 2016. I've been meaning to read it for a while and just kept on putting it to the side. And I thought, well, let's do Dark Matter for the book club. And as I looked deeper into Blake Crouch's work, I found that in 2019, Recursion came out, and a lot of people liked it a lot more. Not that it was a better book necessarily by many. Apparently, a lot of people say Dark Matter is far better. But from the people that I'm looking into that love the ideas and the science fiction aspect to compare the two, Recursion seems to be more of a better bet for I guess maybe what I'm looking for, and I'm hoping you guys would enjoy. So
Amazing.
it's a bit of a thriller, and I'm just gonna say nothing about it because I don't know anything about it.
Well, I'm excited. I've already checked it out of the library on my phone here. So, yeah, good pick.
I just blew an Audible credit on this, Tristan. It better be worth it.
Thank you for joining us again. We really appreciate you all for listening and making it to the end. Wow. Lots to talk about in the future. More guests, more books, more movies, more sci-fi, more science fiction. Until next time.